Well, Dave and Jay, I have 1 o'clock. Do you want to get started?
Yes, sir.
I'm good.
Okay, great. Well, good afternoon for everyone joining us on the East Coast, and good morning if you're on the West Coast. Thanks for being here for today's webinar, Peer-to-Peer Fundraising and Donor Retention Don't Have to Be Enemies. My name is Stephen Shattuck, and I'm the VP of Marketing here at Bloomerang, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. And today I'm joined by 2 leaders here in the nonprofit sector. The first is Dave Boyce. He's CEO of Fundly. Hey there, Dave.
Howdy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to have you. Thanks for joining us today. And also here with us is my colleague at Bloomerang, Jay Love. He's the co-founder and CEO over here at Bloomerang. Hey there, Jay.
Hey, looking forward to it.
Yeah, it should be a really great conversation. So what we're going to do today is Dave is actually going to get us started. He's going to share his thoughts on peer-to-peer fundraising and crowdfunding best practices. And then he's going to hand it off to Jay, who's going to talk about ways to keep those donors after they've contributed to that P2P campaign. And as always, what we do on our webinars is after both presenters have finished is we're going to move into a fun Q&A section where you guys listening can send any questions over, and we'll answer as many as we can. So if you hear something during the presentation that maybe you'd like clarified or explained a little bit more, definitely send those over via the chat functionality right there on the webinar interface. And I'll see those as they come through, and so will Dave and Jay, and we'll just get to as many questions as possible, so don't be shy about asking anything. And what we'll do is we'll also be sending out the slides and the recording of the entire presentation a little later on this afternoon. So look for that later on this afternoon. And without any further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Dave, who's going to get us started and talking about peer-to-peer fundraising. So Dave, I'll let you go ahead.
Thank you very much. Hey, Steve, I think I lost presenter rights, so I'm looking at the slides, but I don't know if you can re-give them to me. I had to restart, and I can just...
Oh, sure. I'll re-give them to you right now. Okay, you should have them again.
I got them. Okay, good.
Great.
Hey, thank you everybody for joining. This is exciting. Jay and I have done a few things together, and we're excited to do a lot more things together. We've been working with customers on combining these 2 concepts of donor acquisition and donor retention. And I know I can speak for me and my team. We love working with the Bloomerang team, and anywhere we can get engaged to help marry these 2 concepts on the ground in real life for great causes. We're just super excited to do it. So I'm going to do just a quick ha ha ha.
I will echo that, Dave, with my little heart here too.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to do just a quick overview of Fundly for those of you who want to get to know what Fundly is. It's going to obviously be hard to cover everything, but I think I can give you a quick bird's eye view of what Fundly is. We are an event fundraising platform. We set out to build software that was 3 things, 3 goals. We wanted to make software that was the easiest to use in terms of fundraising, the prettiest to look at, and the most social. And it seems, that second one seems a little funny, but given that we were doing social fundraising where we're relying on volunteers to do the fundraising for us, we knew that it had to be easy to use because volunteers are not professional fundraisers. And when you ask them to go do something for you, you have to make it easy. They also are going to be much more inclined to steer their friends to pages and experiences that are good looking and that they're proud of. So we had to make it fun and easy. And then finally, I'll show you a little bit of the social that we do. And because we assume that volunteer fundraisers, that might be, when we say event fundraising, think about, a 5K run. I launch a 5K run. The reason I usually do that is so that I can meet more people, get more people involved with my organization. I get my participants to go out and raise money from their friends. and my assumption is that those participants are not professional fundraisers. They are doing this because they care about my organization and they want to be part of this event. So social we add in because that's where most people spend most of their time online. And what we think we've built is the best platform for acquiring new donors. So why the social piece? Well, you know, it turns out social is where we spend most of our time. 90% of U.S. households have one or more social media profile. And on average, each person with a social media profile has 130 friends. Actually, on Fundly, the number's a lot higher. I think that's because of positive self-selection. But on average, 130 friends. And people that are engaged in giving on crowdfunding sites, which is kind of the word that people have used to describe social fundraising, the average donation is $121, which is larger than the average online gift. And part of this is because of the friend-to-friend dynamic. When a friend reaches out to another friend to support a nonprofit that they care about, the response rate is 10 times higher than if the request had come from the organization. And of course, as we just saw, the donation is also higher. So this friend-to-friend fundraising really works. Think about your strategy for acquiring new donors online, and it probably doesn't look too much different than this. This is a customer of ours who used to have a strategy, an online giving form that looked like this, and then they would use email to drive people to that form, and they realized that it's just not inviting, it's not stimulating. You try to get people excited about that, and that's super hard. Versus, I'll give you some examples of some Fundly campaigns. Again, these are kind of event fundraising, online campaigns, which have a target, a thermometer. It shows you pictures of your friends. When you hit this page, if you're logged into Fundly, and it'll show you anyone who you're friends with on Facebook first. It'll show you how far we are against a target, and then there's message, and then down here below, I'll show you a little bit later, blogging functionality, and then ways that you can support. You can become a supporter, become a donor, etc. Each of these is fully brandable, and so depending on, here's an $18,000 into $150,000 campaign for the Breast Cancer Society. Here's a bike-a-thon that's just getting started for the U.S. Bicycling Hall of Fame. Here's a buddy walk. Each of them you can see has, interesting background images and branding. This is all doable, configurable by you, the administrator. You can set your targets, set your content, upload your pictures, upload your videos, and make each of your events look a little bit different. Each of your campaigns look a little bit different and take on the personality of what you're trying to do. So as you can see, this is a lot different than just having a form and driving people to it with email. This is a social experience where people can show up, see who their friends are, engage, comment, share, and then also become fundraisers. The key to all of this, let me just back up one and just show you. This is probably our biggest deployment. We've got a lot of things you saw that were in the $5, $10, $15, $20,000 range. These guys have raised about $4 million, and the way they do it is they set up one of these campaigns for each of the build sites where they're going to send international volunteers. And then each of their volunteers gets their own personal fundraising page, and that personal fundraising page is used to go raise money to sponsor them on their build trip. So that's similar to a 5K walk, but they're using a mission-oriented trip as the event and the reason for raising the money. Like I say, they've raised about $4 million so far using that social fundraising as their model. I mentioned easy. What do I mean by easy? Well, in terms of software design, we set out to build something that anyone, don't have to have a degree in computer science, don't have to be a database administrator, don't have to call in a consultant or IT or your DBA from down the hall. No third parties. You can set these campaigns up. I can set these campaigns up. And all I am is an MBA. So if I can do it, I think anybody can do it. You can access them from anywhere. They're all hosted in the cloud. You don't need special installed software or admin tools. You literally log in from anywhere, including from your phone. We have a mobile application that as a fundraiser you can use to keep track of who's donating, send thank yous, invite more people to join, track your progress, etc. So for the admins, it's easy to use. Here's some examples of some tools that are admin-facing tools. This happens to be the email tool, where I've got some preset templates here. One for get donors, one for get supporters, one for send a thank you, or I can create my own custom templates and keep track of emails that I've sent and reuse them. I can edit any of these, and then I can add new custom templates. So I've got an easy email center for updating. I can also, from here, access my funds. I can change my settings. I can look at who my supporters are. I can take this whole campaign and embed it as a widget on my website or even on my Facebook page. And again, all this is doable without IT involvement. When I go to create a campaign, it's as simple as just this screen right here. I set a title, I say why I'm fundraising, I set my goal, I upload my images, I upload a background image, if I want to do, and then I upload images for that video gallery. Those things videos are very compelling, and images are very compelling. So and every time I upload an image onto my campaign, I might do some of this in my initial configuration. But as I'm running my campaign, I might also be posting updates, and one type of update would be a new photo. Every time I do that, the engine in the background pushes that notification out to all my supporters via email, and also to any Facebook accounts that I've connected to it, so that everyone who has liked my organization on Facebook also has the chance to see each of my new updates. So, as I make updates, posts get automatically made to social sites, but I can also create my own custom posts to social sites right from the Fundly interface to help me market my campaign. One of the key features on Fundly is that once I set that campaign up, let's go back to the example of the 5K walk, then I can go recruit my supporters to be fundraisers themselves. When a fundraiser launches, registers for my event, they're automatically provisioned. They'll go through the registration process. If I have a fee associated with registering for the event, they'll pay that fee. I'll get them to connect to their Facebook account, and I'll get them to specify, small, medium, large T-shirt or whatever other custom things that I need, so that I can know they're participating in my 5K event. But when they're finished, I've automatically provisioned them with their own personal event page. And that page is the place where they can keep track of where and when the event is, who else is participating, but also it's a home base for them to start fundraising. Because I've already grabbed their Facebook information, I've already started announcing to their friends that they're participating in my event. And when people come visit their personal page, they can either register for the event themselves or support their friend who's in this 5K run. This page that I built for them, actually, they don't have to do any work on. it inherits all of the default content. You saw those gorgeous pages from before. All of that imagery, those photos, the map, the time, the date of the event, everything, or if it's an online campaign that doesn't have a map and a time and a date and it's just a campaign, it still inherits all of the branding and the imagery and the words from the parent campaign, so that all they have to do is start reaching out to their friends and steering them to that page to get them to support the campaign. As we've worked with our customers, we've collected best practices, and I stole this from a webinar we did recently with the Orlando Health System. Our sponsor there, who's been rolling out across all of their online fundraising and all of their events, gave these tips for being successful. He says you need to have a compelling story with inspiring content. I think that's the beginning of any successful fundraising campaign. And then as they've been doing these events, they said, first thing you want to do is find a core group of interested volunteers who will kick off your campaign. It's sort of like throwing a party. You wouldn't print a whole flyers and then go start pasting them up all over town. The first thing you would do is make sure that your best friends are coming to your party. You get them locked in first. You'd check dates and you'd make sure that you've got a core group that's coming. Then you would reach out to an extended group of friends and make sure that based on the awesome group of people you have already attending, that they're interested in coming. And then once you have, your first 25 people committed to the party, now you go out to the masses and start recruiting. So what Mike says is get a core group of interested volunteers, build a plan to get them recruited as volunteer fundraisers, and then start communicating. Make sure you have a clear goal, make sure you have a clear schedule, and then you make sure you have somebody who's driving the success of this thing. Let me show you what they did in their first event. This is, again, Michael Schmidt at Orlando Health Systems. They did what historically had been a $10,000 5K walk, and they launched it with really about 30 days notice. They switched over from their old fundraising platform to this new one as kind of a test. This is not their biggest event, but they thought, let's try it out on a $10,000 event. Well, as you can see, they came out of the gates on fire, and they ended up raising 5 times the money that they thought they would. They got over 1,000 people supporting it, and they really cited the ease of use as the reason why people enjoyed sending it out to their friends, enjoyed the run-up to the event, and really got a pretty steep uptake in terms of fundraising for those 30 days just prior to the event. Just one slide example before we go into kind of summary of how to make these things successful. This was also a race, but this was a bicycle race. It's a 50-year-old event at Indiana University called the Little 500. It's always been a fundraising event, but they've always only raised money through sponsorships and ticket sales. They've never raised money through crowdfunding. They decided, what if we got our 63 teams each to have their own fundraising page and each of the participants to have their own fundraising page underneath that? What could we do? Well, they created about 250,000 impressions on Facebook. They got an audience of almost 75,000 on Facebook. They raised $13,000, and they did this all in 1 week. They launched this campaign 1 week prior to the event. The event is 50 years old. Of course, they start planning it the day after the prior year's event, but they didn't have this crowdfunding idea until about a month prior, and they launched it a week prior. They were excited enough about it that they're now rolling it out across other Indiana University campaigns, and they're gearing up, of course, for the Little 500 next year as well. So just a couple of tips if you're using event fundraising and social fundraising for how to make this succeed. the number one tip is to make sure that it's personal. This message right here from your personal fundraiser is the most important thing. It's a friend-to-friend ask, not an organization ask, not a spam-based ask, not a mass mailing, direct mail, email. No, it's this person who you know who's asking you, will you support me? Actually, in a recent study by Hope Consulting, personal ties were cited as the number one deciding factor in individuals making a donation to any nonprofit. Number one before mission, number one before efficiency of the profit. The number one decision is, do I have a personal connection? And what we know is that personal campaign pages convert a lot better than generic campaign pages. This personal campaign page can also be used to drive a lot of updates. There are blog updates that show up down here, as I mentioned, when photos get uploaded, when milestones are reached. The campaign sends out automatic reminders, and it keeps people engaged, and it really keeps them interested and motivated. Every time somebody makes a donation, they get their own thank you card that they can post to Facebook, and all of the return loops and the social engagement that this creates makes it feel very personal. It's definitely not one and done. The next tip is to make it social. Now, the platform takes care of most of that for you. But we know, we saw earlier that 90% of households have social media profiles. Well, 60% of browsers are logged into Facebook at any given time. Facebook is is where increasingly people spend most of their online time. So what we've done with Fundly is we've made sure that every action that happens on Fundly, if you've connected your Facebook account, it gets shared on Facebook as well. You join the event with a one-click join using Facebook. You are able to both register and donate, and then share the event in the process of joining the event. And by the time you're done, your friends know that you're participating, and what that means for us as nonprofit organizations is that we've now tapped into an audience that we did not have access before. We, of course, know the people in our database, but don't know their friends yet. So if we can get the people in our database to participate in our events and then share with their friends, that opens us up to 100 times more people than we would have access to otherwise. And that's how we drive new donor acquisition. As those posts get made, this is a real example of how it shows up on a Facebook timeline. You can see each of these updates up as milestones and donating, creating a campaign. This shows up right in context on Facebook, where people spend most of their time. So this is my last slide, and I'll hand it off to Jay. But we have made this as easy as we can think of to start. You literally go to fundly.com and you start a campaign. That's it. You hit start for free. You start the campaign. We have what's called a Fundly guide that walks you through each of the steps to show you how to build your campaign. And then there's an omnipresent button over here to the left-hand side of any Fundly page that says support and feedback. Click on that button, and you are tapped into our support line. If you're trying to do something bigger than, say, a $25,000 campaign, if you're trying to do multiple campaigns or something like I described with Habitat for Humanity, you just use that support and feedback button to say, hey, I want to do something a little bigger, and then we will talk to you about some of our enterprise scale deployments. One of the things you might ask on that support and feedback button is, hey, how do we get this to connect directly to Bloomerang? Because not only do we want to acquire new donors, but we also want to retain them. And that's something we love to talk about, and we'll respond to that support and feedback inquiry as well. So I think, Jay, that might be a good tee up for donor retention.
Wonderful. Well, thanks, Dave. I so appreciate it. And please allow me to say right off the bat that what Dave is saying is so true. Our mutual clients were up and going and bringing in brand new donors that came into our database, in literally just a few hours of time to make that happen. So what Dave's referring to as far as the ease of use and the graphic visibility and all that's there, it is truly the case. And as I looked at all the different opportunities and who we wanted to partner with, it was obvious that the simplicity really tied into the simplicity and the way we go about helping people get databases up and going quickly. But let's jump to the next slide here and talk about that. Donor acquisition tool, step 2. Well, the effective use of a donor database makes the new donor retention achievable because, as you know, if you're bringing a lot of people in that front door, if we don't do something to build a relationship and thereby establish some retention levels, you're going to have to do that process year after year after year. And there's an easier way to make that happen because just think if you continue the process year after year, but yet you're still retaining at a much higher level the ones that came in, wow, you have the best of both worlds and you can really increase the revenue going to your mission in a much greater way. So what do I mean when I talk about an effective use of a database? What exactly does that question mark that I'm putting here really mean? Well, that means from my viewpoint simply that everyone is using it daily to build relationships. And that's been the so-called deep, dark secret of so many databases, donor databases, is that they were the domain and the where only the people that were in an administrative or a database type level position or database administrator role, those were the only people in the past that used these databases. So that therefore, a lot of activity and some of the things that we're building into Bloomerang would not be able to come to life if it was not for the fact that all of the people that are touching donors need to be able to see and know what's happening there, because not only do you get their additional input and their notes and their information, but you're putting that at their fingertips, that every time they're talking to somebody in person, on the phone, sending out an email, sending out a letter, whatever the case may be, they know the full extent of that relationship and how we're tending to grow that. And when you've got something like the Fundly feeding in all of these new relationships, and you've got the background information that comes with that feed of where they came from, how they were involved, who is their connector to your organization, you can really take advantage of that in several different ways. So let's talk a little bit about what this new donor commitment can mean. I like to refer to it as lifetime value. And new donor commitment is the next logical step after a relationship is created and nurtured. And as you move over to where people start using the term commitment and loyalty and nurture and people that really sort of adopt your mission as one of their own to do that, then this lifetime value really comes into play. Unfortunately, the amount of new donor commitment for any type of new donor coming in is extremely low. The Fundraising Effectiveness Project, which is where this data is coming from over the last 5 years, is a joint project by the Urban Institute and the Association of Fundraising Professionals. Their information has shown that overall donor retention has fallen over the last 5 years. You can see from 50% down to the 41% that's here right now. But the scary part is if we look here, new donor retention is averaging only 27%. So only 1 out of 4 approximately new donors stay and give again in the second year. And so let's talk a little bit about that, because I truly think that the retention problem, whether it's new donors or existing problems, is new or existing donors, is really a donor relationship problem or a donor relationship dilemma. And I believe that with the right amount of expertise and help, we can all address that. And when we talk about the expertise that's involved, I refer to 2 industry experts that have been kind enough to team up with us at Bloomerang and with all of our partners such as Fundly. The person on the right there, some of you may be familiar with, that's Dr. Adrian Sargent. He is the father of donor retention, has been doing research into donor loyalty and donor retention for over 20 years. He's the person that's in the endowed chair at the Center of Philanthropy at Indiana University and one of the 10 most influential people in fundraising. And he has coined many of the phrases, and I'll talk about some of his tips and tricks that really come into play to make a huge difference there. And they're really not tricks in any way, shape, or form. They're really just common sense that's being applied now to build relationships. Over on the left is Mr. Tom Ahern, another member of our team, and he is our donor communications head coach and one of the top authorities on donor communications. And especially for people that come to you from the peer-to-peer world, they have come in based upon communications from their friends, their family, people that they know, people that they work with. And that communication, when it comes in from a tool like Fundly, is already very powerful. Very well done. Dave and his team there have put together a very graphically pleasing and visually stunning way to communicate with folks. Well, we've got to keep our game up at that high level as we move into the next level here and keep that communications going so that the retention can stay moving on an upward trend as we make that happen. So when we talk about donor retention best practices, it was Dr. Sargent who made the phrase that a 10% improvement in retention can double the lifetime value of your donor database. And I really think that for new donors, we can make that much, much more than a 10% retention. I think for many of the organizations, if the proper tools and proper steps are put in place there, you can take that 25, 27% retention rate and double it so that at least half of your donors are coming back next year and supporting your organization. Whether or not they participate in the same event or not will make no difference. So let's talk a little bit about what lifetime value is, because this concept is one you want to get across so that every member of your team is really focused in on what the lifetime value is for any person that's contained in your database that's given to your organization. Lifetime value, as I define it, is the total net contribution that a donor generates during his or her lifetime in your database. So that's based upon two key factors. The first key factor is what is their average gift, and I'll make a crude dollar sign here for that. You really need to know what is the average gift. Dave showed you in one of his earlier slides what average gift was for someone coming in via online and peer-to-peer, and it's 20 to 25% higher than just a normal online gift. But the other item is the number of years that they are with your organization. And I've always found this to be a wonderful strategic topic for a board meeting, because most board members are not aware of what the average donor's gift is to their organization or the average number of years that someone supports their group there. Many of them are not aware that we have this, only 1 out of 4 of new donors staying with us year after becoming in and becoming a new donor. So one of the things that we do with the Bloomerang application is make it really obvious of what your retention rate is. And as you can see by this retention wheel that's here on your screen, we're always showing you every time that you come into the application what your retention rate is for your organization going back exactly 365 days, going back 1 year. So you can see, have I improved my retention rate from last week to this week, or from last month to this month? Are we moving it upwards, and how are we keeping track of that? So it's very, very important to be able to know how to easily measure that and bring that up to an upper level. Now, some of the things that you can do to move that retention level up, and we're going to talk about that as it relates to new donors here. So bear in mind, this can be used for all types of donors, but I'm going to use some of the new donors that we have here. So what we want to first of all do is make sure that they're aware of our performance data. How well are we achieving our mission? And if your communication relays to them how well you're achieving your mission, that is one aspect of it. We're going to talk about number 6 down below at the bottom, also communicating on where their specific funding is going to achieve that. But you need to be able to report and say whether or not your organization is achieving their mission. Next one, cannot emphasize enough about this, connect often. If they have come to you from something like an application that's a peer-to-peer like Fundly, that's through social media. People connect, if not daily or weekly on social media, hourly on that. As Dave alluded to earlier, I think that's a stunning statistic, Dave. What was it? Was it 60% of all browsers are on Facebook at any time people are logged into their browser?
It's crazy. Yeah, they don't log out. You're shopping or browsing or whatever, you're logged into Facebook.
It is remarkable the amount of sharing that's there. So when you think about that, people that have been connected, and most likely the person that they sponsored that is in your event, or that the reason that they gave, they may be connecting them with that person once a day, once a week, and I'm sure at the least once a month to do that. And if we go 6 months or a year without connecting to them, there's no way that they're going to come back and be in the fold. In fact, one of Adrian Sargent's key points is if someone has not come back to us and reconnected in some way or another in 90 days or less, the chances of them becoming a donor again have dropped very, very significantly. It's very, very important that we have a touch point and some sort of a way to let them become involved with us in one way or another. It doesn't necessarily have to be another financial transaction, but that 90-day period is very, very important to make sure that we have in place there. We develop that relationship with that new donor much like a good personal friendship for them. So think about that. A good personal relationship doesn't rely on just email, or it doesn't rely on the telephone or text messages. It's usually a combination of different ways of communicating. When you think about how you got to know a good friend of yours, my guess is you probably saw them in person, then you reconnected by phone, then you maybe did a text message, and you maybe did an email, connected again by phone, maybe did it through other, met them and connected through other people again. That same way is here, is that there's multiple touch points, and some people have preferences for which ones. So I'm always amazed that many nonprofits will take that brand new donor and just throw them into the direct mail group and expect that direct mail is going to work for somebody that came to you via social media and peer-to-peer. That's more than likely not going to be the case. Now, these last two are the real key ones there. Let me put a star here for that with this: find and use the human connectors. If you don't write anything else down from this webinar today, if they came to you from peer-to-peer, try to utilize the individual that was the human connector to connect with them next time. So for instance, if I got 19 people to sponsor me for running in a 5K race, they all sponsored Jay Love, it would be very nice that sometime in that first 90 days, if I reached back out to them and I told them how much I appreciated them sponsoring me and why this nonprofit is meaningful in my life, why this mission touches my heart and my soul, and why I'm involved, and asking them if they could get further involved in some way or shape besides just sponsoring me in that race. That human connector, in making that happen, is such a significant factor in making sure that they're retained from one time to the next. And then the last one here is people always want to know what difference their monies are making. Even if it's that $131, that average transaction fee that Dave talked about earlier, let them know what $131 meant to your mission. If you're a homeless shelter or a food bank, how many people $131 feed? If you are an animal rescue, how many animals did that help rescue? If you are helping with conservation or doing something in a third world country, or just helping people with scholarships, whatever the case may be, let them know exactly what the direct tie-in was to your mission that those dollars helped achieve, and maybe in those future communications talk about what an extra $131 or $262 would be able to bring for you to do that. And that's all part of building that relationship with those people. So let's talk about ways that the database can help you with that relationship. As you can see here, this is a summary screen for an individual, and what I'm going to focus in over here is the engagement level, this little box that you see right here. And we can see right now that James is at a warm level, and that means to us that we are moving the relationship along, and we're almost at the midway point as far as the levels of engagement that we track for them. And when we talk about the levels of engagement that we track, here are the factors that make a difference in those levels of engagement here. Their recency and pattern of giving, whether or not they're an outright donor or whether they do it through a recurring transaction or a multi-year pledge. Those latter two move it up higher. The number of years of consecutive giving. We know that each time someone becomes another year giver, whether they go from the first to the second year, from second to third, third to fourth year, their engagement level with us is zooming up that level. Whether or not their giving is moving upwards or downward in any year. Obviously, a lapsed would move something down quite a bit. These next two areas I'm going to point out, the social media and event attendance and volunteer activities, these can all come via your website. So as people sign up to attend events, whether they come to you through an engine like Fundly, whether they're volunteering and helping, or whether they send something about you on social media, those are all indicators of engagement. And we bring all those factors to life and allow them to come open and do that. Next are the factors that come to play with communication. So if someone opens your emails, if they click on them, if they unsubscribe or forward them to other people, those are all factors that move the engagement up or down. And then we also keep track of their stewardship, whether or not they are using a matching gift employer to bring in more, whether or not they are soliciting people on your behalf. All of these items here, all of these come together to move that engagement needle up or down. We can see here, I've got Rob Signorelli here. He is on fire. This is somebody, as you can see, look what his love giving have done over the last several years. And my guess would be he's also engaged with us in our various communication practices, meeting with people on our team, sending stuff to us, referring people to us. These are all factors that can make that engagement needle move up. And I guarantee you, anybody that you have at this midway point here or higher, the retention levels are going to be much, much greater, and you're going to see much bigger differences in the success you have with your retention. So all these all come together in our database that ties directly in with the Fundly product to be what we refer to as a next generation database or CRM. And next generation to us means it's easy enough for everybody to use, even an MBA or a CEO, as David was referring to earlier, and it enables the donor best practices to come to life. So with that, Stephen, let me throw it back and let's see what sort of questions we've got for Dave and myself and see if we can try to answer some of those directly here.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Thanks for that presentation. And Dave, thanks for your piece as well. Really interesting stuff. We've probably got about 10 minutes for questions. So for you listening, if there was something that maybe you wanted explained or elaborated on further, feel free to send those over through the chat function. I know a few of you have already, but we do have some time for questions, and we'll be happy to take anything. To get started, Dave, I know there were a couple questions about some of the LinkedIn and Facebook integrations. Touch on that just real briefly for the folks who maybe weren't looking in the chat box earlier.
Sure. Yeah, there was a question about LinkedIn integration. We have our deepest integration is with Facebook, which you probably picked up, where we literally grab the Facebook social graph for each of our users and then compare that with what we already have on file, and then we're able to literally send off emails and reminders and notifications based on if a friend of yours is doing something interesting. We do have a LinkedIn integration as well, but we're just getting started. It's not a deep graph integration. It's allow me to post updates automatically to my status update on LinkedIn type integration. And so we're just getting started there. It is, the equivalent of what a lot of social integrations out there are, but it's not as deep as what we know it could be. We've invited LinkedIn to join our board of advisors, which they've done, and we're starting to work more and more closely with them, so watch this space.
Good news. Hey, can I fire a question at you, Dave?
Sure.
How did you and your technical team achieve such an intimate relationship with Facebook? I mean, we've never seen any other application that populates and moves things around and handshakes with Facebook in nearly the same manner that you did. Can you fill in the audience a little bit about how you guys achieved it?
Well, it's yeah, good question. You know, I started this company in Boston, which is about as far away from you know, West Coast as you can get, and I realized pretty quickly if we were going to hang our hat on social, we were going to have to relocate the company. So we moved right here to Mountain View. Facebook's about 10 miles up the road. Google's about 2 miles down the road. Same thing with LinkedIn. And then we invited Facebook to join our advisory board. We joined their nonprofit advisory board. And a lot of these tools are out there and available. You just have to work with them, and you have to have engineers who have done it before and who are patient with the Facebook APIs because they're changing all the time. And, you know, it's just a labor of love.
Well, good. Well, I figured it had something to do with some of the engineering talent and the proximity, so thanks, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Jay, we've got a question in the chat room from Scott, and he was wondering how we measure engagement levels. So he's wondering how those touches with an individual get recorded into the system, which increases that meter of ours.
Okay. The meter is based upon an underlying formula or algorithm. It's not that dissimilar from how something like Google ranks on when you type in a search request, how it ranks things on the top there. That algorithm is based upon all of the research and best practices by Dr. Adrian Sargent. So we allow, like, someone that clicks on an email counts a certain number of points. Somebody that makes a donation counts a certain point. Someone that upgrades their donation to a higher level counts much more. And we've got various weighting factors there that have been proven in all the facets of Adrian Sargent's research to do that. So it's a sophisticated formula, but it also makes a lot of sense on what is important to the relationships. And we're starting to see that bear out because our customers are telling us that people that are in those upper levels have gone on already to be major gift individuals, legacy donors, but more importantly, they almost always renew and are retained from 1 year to the next. So does that answer the question, I hope?
Yeah, I think so. I think it also goes back to those, you know, engagement factors you showed on that other slide. You know, all those things can raise or lower someone's engagement meter, it seems.
Yep, so true.
Great. Well, Dave, we've got a question here from Kimberly. She says that it's her second year of using a fundraising page or a peer-to-peer program, and it sounds like she's gonna switch to Fundly. So she's wondering how she can perhaps include last year's participants in her new campaign on Fundly. So maybe migrating those folks over.
That's a good question, Kimberly. I think the best thing to do would be to launch and, you know, get one of our support people engaged. There are ways to do mass uploads of people into Fundly, lists into Fundly. The other thing you can do is use your existing email service to let everyone know to join the new one. Of course, their activity from prior years will have been on a former platform, not the new platform, but we can get their contact information into Fundly, and then you can start, you know, with the running start, and then everything they do going forward will be logged in Fundly. But it's pretty easy to upload. I think you will want, though, to get somebody on the hook from support to walk you through that process.
Cool, great. And Dave, I know there were a couple of questions about pricing. I assume they can find that on your website. Is there a pretty simple pricing scheme or structure for you guys? How does that work?
There is. You know, one other thing for Kimberly is if you're working with Bloomerang, that's another way to cut things over. We've got a two-way integration with Bloomerang. Anytime something gets created in Fundly, it can get pushed towards Bloomerang and vice versa. Mm-hmm. Yeah, pricing is just at fundly.com/pricing. There's multiple tiers. There's just the walk-in and get started, which is no monthly fee whatsoever. And that's based on credit card fee plus a Fundly transaction fee. And then if you want to do something bigger, if you want to do integrations, if you want to do a large-scale campaign, just let us know. And then there are packages where there's a small monthly fee, a few $100s, and then we bring our percentage fee down when you're on one of those.
Great.
And I noticed too, Stephen, that someone had asked in the chat, how does Fundly compare? How do you pick Fundly over the others? And I won't put Dave in that position, but if you don't mind, I'll take that one, because I looked at all different peer-to-peer applications out there, and as I said when I first started talking in my part of the webinar, if you really want something that's easy for your team to start using and is so visually appealing that people just love looking and interacting with and combines with the social media, it's really those three reasons: ease of use, the visual appeal of it, and the stickiness that I have, and then what it achieves through the social media, especially through Facebook, that just drives donation after donation and donor after donor and participant after participant to your site. It truly is the stickiest of the sticky of those types of applications. And I'll add one other point there that most people would not know in their evaluation. Their organization was one of the few that had a true, what we call API, Application Programming Interface, so that we could exchange data with them in a real-time manner rather than having to do sort of a convoluted exchange of data at certain intervals of time. This really is the way items should be exchanged and how information should be exchanged between applications. And hats off to Dave and his engineering team for how they put that API together.
That's an easy compliment to return, because there are also not very many CRMs out there, donor databases, who have modern APIs. It's crazy in 2013 to have to say that. But boy, was it easy to integrate with Bloomerang for our technical team because of how technically literate and modern your architecture is. That's been very pleasant.
Oh, I'm blushing, Dave.
Well, Jay, we've got a follow-up question from Scott, and he was wondering how we record offline interactions like phone calls or face-to-face meetings versus just the electronic type things.
Excellent question. As you noticed when I was talking, I said it was very, very important that this be an indispensable tool for the fundraisers and for your executives themselves. We want it to be that no one would think of being on the phone or doing anything without being able to use the application. And those notes and those emails and stuff that you send yourself can all be placed into Bloomerang. And one of the things that we do within the Bloomerang application is we let you mark whether or not that the interaction was initiated by the donor or the prospective donor or the constituent, or whether you initiated, because we give literally twice the value in the engagement meter if it was initiated by the donor. So if someone picks up the phone and calls you or stops by your office or invites you to lunch, to do that, and then we hope after that meeting takes place or that exchange on the telephone takes place that all of your wonderful notes and follow-up items all are moved into the database so that they're not contained in somebody's head. And we want something that is so easy to use, whether you're on your computer, whether you're on a tablet, whether you're on a telephone or mobile phone, that you can make use of that. There's really no reason why anybody that's talking or interacting with donors cannot use the application. It's that simple and easy to use.
Speaking of easy to use, we have a question in here about how Bloomerang would compare to Salesforce.
Well,
Do you want to speak to that?
Well, there's some vast differences there. Salesforce is one of the very best commercial CRM systems out there. But you notice I said commercial CRM systems. It's set for people to manage relationships and to work with people that are generating invoices and doing things of that nature from a commercial business standpoint. It really wasn't meant to record nonprofit donations that have memorials and tributes and hard and soft credits, and whether or not it's tax deductible, whether or not it's tied to multiple funds. There is a lot that comes into play there that has to be added on later, and it causes a lot of stress and a lot of additional consulting time and dollars to make that happen. The other key thing is the version of Salesforce that's out there for the nonprofit world really doesn't have Salesforce behind it as far as day-to-day support. And there is not a customer that we help get going that doesn't have a few support questions each of the weeks that they started with the application, and then ongoing. They'll call us or email us or chat with us on online chat with questions about how do I do this in your application. Well, there's nobody at Salesforce supporting their application in the nonprofit world. It's all done by third-party individuals, and most of those third-party individuals tend to charge you as you ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
David, is there anything
Great.
you would add to that?
Well, I've used both, and I think you characterized it well. From an MBA perspective, I can use Bloomerang. It's really hard for me to use Salesforce, and in fact, I've never been able to use Salesforce out of the box. It's had to be highly configured for me to be able to figure my way through it. Too many options, and I think if I had to use it for a nonprofit, I wouldn't know where to start.
It's sort of hard for an application that's being used by the federal government, by large multinational corporations, to be used by a small or medium-sized nonprofit. That's just a lot that's in the box that you have to figure out what to use and do, versus something that was built to be used for nonprofits that are small to medium size, and that's exactly what the Bloomerang product and our partners were built to do.
Great. Well, we're just about running out of time, and I want to give Dave just a couple minutes to let people know how they can get in touch with him if they had additional questions or wanted to look at the software further. So, Dave,
Sure.
why don't you do that for us?
Yep, I'm dave@fundly.com. Happy to engage over email, and yeah, in fact, in the chat room, I was just agreeing to see if I had some slides to help somebody out for presentation. I'm also David J. Boyce 1 is my Twitter handle, and like I said, anytime you want to get Fundly support, just click on Help and Support, and any of us would be happy to help out.
Great. And Jay, why don't you do the same for folks who want to learn more about Bloomerang?
That's easy. Just go to www.bloomerang.co, and all of our contact information, Steve and myself, right there. But more importantly, pricing information, comparisons, videos, demonstrations, and information about upcoming educational sessions like you're about to talk about here.
Yeah, we have another webinar this week. We have two this week. We got a little crazy with the webinars, but for those of you who enjoyed this presentation, there's another webinar tomorrow, same time, 1 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be talking with a nice agency here in Indianapolis that we're partnered with. They're just experts on branding, and they work with nonprofits large and small. So they're going to share some strategies about how to build your brand for your nonprofit. So that should be a really interesting conversation. We're going to deviate a little bit away from product and just talk about some branding strategies. So if that interests you, visit our website, visit our webinar page. The link there, and register. Totally free. We'll be chatting for about an hour tomorrow, so check that out. And since we've got just a few seconds left, I want to say a final thanks to Dave for joining us all the way from the West Coast. It was really great to have you, David. Thanks a lot for sharing an hour with us.
Thank you for setting it up. I really enjoy working with you guys, and this has been terrific.
Yeah, it's been fun. And Jay, thanks again, as always, for joining us.
Would never miss it, Stephen, as you well know.
All right, and for those of you listening, thanks for hanging out with us for an hour out of your day today, and I will be sending the slides and a recording later this afternoon, so watch your inbox for that. And with that, I'll say goodbye, so thanks again for joining us. Have a great rest of your afternoon.
Bye, guys.
Bye.